Welcome back to the Bliss of the Abyss, finding a way through the pandemic hand in hand. This week's guest is writer, genius, lovely man, friend, Stephen Laughton, who is the author of, amongst other plays, Run, One Jewish Boy. Might have heard of that if you listen to this show. And is the current writer-in-residence at the Astrophysics Department of the American Museum of Natural History in New York. Imagine that, working at the Astrophysics Department and writing plays and movies and short films. Fucking cool. And in fact, that's not the only thing that's excellently cool about this gentleman. And we get into all of that this week, including, but not limited to, the possibility of One Jewish Boy coming back, being an alien of extraordinary ability, depression, rising from that depression like a phoenix and using healthy working habits, as well as being insanely productive, which he is, and I wish I was. But that's all that there is on this week, and it's more than you should need. So, without any further ado, I present to you the wonderfully talented Stephen Laughton.
Hello.
Hello?
Can you hear me okay?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Hello, love. How you doing?
Oh, yeah, I'm all right, mate. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all right, I think. I'm sitting in a car in the middle of the fucking mountains. It's hilarious.
You're out in the Catskills, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm up in the Catskills. Yeah. My friends, Dan and Andy have this really beautiful house up here, basically, that I kind of come up to fairly frequently. So that's good.
Is it like nice. a getaway?
Yeah. I mean, they basically live up here now. Yeah, they kind of come into the city, like, I don't know, every now and then. But yeah, they kind of come in and steal me and then bring me up here, which is kind of nice. I mean,
it must be a blessed relief from the crazy high-rise non-stop New York. Although, is New York like that right now?
It is, yeah. It's still, like, it's been really coming back. Like, there've been moments, like, I kind of feel that you're never really going to hold New York down for very long.
Yeah.
So, of course, over the last year, there's been, like, really quiet moments, for sure. And that's been kind of nice in a way. Like, the lack of tourists, not that I have anything against tourists at all, but just fewer people on the streets.
Yeah.
So you can really enjoy what the city feels like. But over the last month, you've certainly seen, like, it feels like the old city again. Oh. Basically, it's coming back. I was joking about it last week with someone saying basically people hate each other on the streets again, and I've missed it. Like, you could hear the chorus of fuck yous, which is just great.
Yeah, that means the city's returning to its normal rhythm.
Yeah. Exactly. It's kind of wonderful.
Oh, that's good to hear.
How's London?
London is, it's sort of coming back as well.
Okay.
Yeah, during the peak of it all, because you've been there for a while now in New York, weren't you? I know you've been back and forth a little bit, but
yeah, but basically solidly for a year.
Right.
Like, since lockdown, basically. Since the play closed and I flew back in that panic. I basically, apart from like 3 weeks when I went and did a visa run. I've been here the entire time, basically.
Wow. Yeah. So, I mean, why don't we tell people who are listening how we know each other? And, you've alluded to the play closing. Why don't we just fill in the gaps for some people who don't know?
Okay. So, do you want to do that or should I do that?
Well, it's up to you. You're the guest. I'm the host. What do you think would be most appropriate?
I should do it. You should do it.
Okay. I met Stephen. I met Stephen in 2018. Was it? Or 2017?
Yeah, I think so. 2018, I think.
I think it must be the first auditions.
2018. Yeah, because we did the show originally in December 2018, didn't we? Going into January 2019.
That's right.
Yeah, just after the summer, I think.
Yeah. So I met you auditioning for what went on to become One Jewish Boy at the Old Red Lion. and then subsequently transferred to Trafalgar Studios, rest in peace.
Over Shalom.
Where we were performing and doing rather well when the pandemic hit. Remember?
Oh my God!
And then you moved to New York, where you have been a writer in residence at the Hayden Planetarium. Is that correct?
Yeah. Part of the
Brilliant.
astrophysics team at the American Museum of Natural History. So I've kind of been here on and off since May 2019, and here solidly, like I said, from like March last year when the play.
God, do you remember?
Oh my God, it was hideous. I tell you what, my overriding memory of that crazy week was sitting there on press nights, by us aside, watching one of the most electrifying, exciting, visceral performances I've ever seen on any stage ever. Like, let's put aside my role in this, but watching this production with these actors, you know, like the lights, the direction, the sound, the fucking heat that you two were kind of making on that stage, with this equal mix of absolute pride in what we'd achieved and how gorgeous this was. And like watching the auditorium, all of these people lapping it up. Everyone was on the front of their seats, just like really like connected with you guys. And then suddenly about halfway through, just bursting into tears and not being able to stop myself from like uncontrollably sobbing in my seat because I knew we were going to be called off by the end of the week. Oh God. And that is like literally like this kind of equal mix of just like, and woo. That was very confusing. And then knowing that because it was press night, you know, obviously like press are there and people want to talk to you or whatever. So having to leave the second you guys started getting the applause to just pull my shit together and basically just like going out the back of the theatre and chain smoking. Sitting in kind of on the curb, just like, oh my God, I'm gonna go and face people now.
Yeah.
And then just like walking back in. And I don't know, I think it was Ed, our producer, kind of saw me, grabbed me, took me to the bar, gave me like a double shot of whiskey. It's like, pull yourself together, you gotta go and just schmooze. I'm just like, okay, I've got this.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, God, the play, beautiful play.
The play and then the plague. Yeah.
And then the plague. Wouldn't it have closed a year tomorrow? It was till April the 2nd, wasn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, that's right. We had all kinds of dates, but then there might have been further dates. You know, there were still negotiations, weren't there? So we might have still been doing it.
On
yeah.
Who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, I wonder.
We will be a phoenix that rises from those flames.
Yes, right. But there's so many phoenixes rising from such a big furnace.
I know.
The whole world. But yeah, no, definitely, of course. One of my abiding memories from that week. This is so silly, but it was during a matinee. It was after a matinee. And so, you know, throughout the whole week, the subtext, like you say, was growing of like, any minute now, we're going to be yanked and the world is going to stop, you know. Mm-hmm. And I just remember finishing the play, going into the gents for a piss. And this old boy is in there and he's finishing up. And he walks out and I kind of look at him and he looks at me and he's like, right, yeah, got to behave well now, haven't we? And he goes over and washes his hands and then leaves.
Got to behave well. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
That's how prepared he was.
That's how prepared he was. I better wash my hands after I piss. Standard, buddy. Standard.
No.
That's hilarious. But just, yeah, also like that deep-seated denialism. Mm. Do you know what I mean? Like knowing that this thing was kind of suddenly unfolding and that London was very much suddenly taking it seriously. And just kind of going, no, it can't be that bad. Mm. But then suddenly it just escalated. Like it really snowballed in like a couple of days, didn't it?
Yeah, it did.
Like I think from the Tuesday or the Wednesday up until like the Friday, it was like, we are we are in the middle of a shit show that is about to unfold. And I remember, because we had the talk on the Saturday night, didn't we? And the producers really wanted me to come and do it. And I was going, I'm just not going to be able to. I have to go back to New York. If I don't go back to New York, I'm going to get stuck here. Yeah. And then rushing back on the Friday, like changing my flights. Oh, and I booked this really fancy hotel because my partner was flying over from New York. So I booked this really nice hotel, and then had to abandon that on Friday, and he couldn't get on a plane from
they'd already
a bunch of people. Yeah. Like a bunch of people were saying to me, you know, in America, who were going to fly over, that like they couldn't, the flights were being cancelled and stuff. So I just remember getting on a flight on the Friday. It was Friday the 13th. And no irony, and getting into the airport at JFK, and it was just chaotic. It was just crazy, and there were like all of these like police and like special, like, I mean, not like army people, but like special something. And you know, I've not been long enough to know all the uniforms,
but they have big guns.
Yeah, and we were being herded into lines, basically, and which is also, you know, as a Jewish person, kind of like, what the fuck has happened? Do you know what I mean? And I was just kind of very much in that airport. Actually, it was very efficient. I got in and out the airport really quickly, but I remember just like being like in fear of like what had I walked into. Because America had suddenly taken it very, very seriously, and you know, obviously, the orange idiot had, you know, finally decided that he was closing borders that weekend. So I think I was on like one of the last flights that they let into the country, basically. Amazing,
because then it was closed for months, wasn't it?
Yeah, and actually, because of the nature of things, if I leave the country now, I'm not going to be allowed back in. Basically, because of the borders being closed and having to have special permission to travel. Yeah, basically,
even with your visa.
Yeah, even with my visa. Yeah. The only people who can travel freely are green card holders and citizens. And because I'm not a green card holder or a citizen, I'm on like an alien of extraordinary ability visa.
Yes. What superpowers do you have?
Shh, don't tell anyone. There are none.
Ridiculous. Very talented.
I know, it's ridiculous. But you know what? The bit that I like the most about that is the alien bit.
Yeah, right. Alien. You're a legal alien.
I'm an Englishman in New York. Yeah, because, well, I got back in because you could get special permission if you were an artist. And actually, I got the permission because one of the gigs that I was doing, there were like a whole bunch of American jobs on the line. Like if I didn't do it, they just weren't going to replace me, basically. Right. So that's how I got permission to, when I flew out because also getting a visa in the middle of a pandemic is just a shit show.
Yeah.
And that was like a whole next level stress too. And I finally managed, and like the London consulate I got it, but then no consulate would issue it, basically, around the world. And I finally managed to get an appointment in the Netherlands. And then they expedited it because we had like 2 gigs that were supposed to be starting in the autumn. I nearly said the fall then.
Nice.
And yeah, they gave me, and I remember just being armed. I had like this folder of like 130 pages because I'd been talking to like senators and just like a whole mass of people were like trying to get me this visa and get me, if I left, getting me back in. And I managed to get the special permission to come back because of, you know, the jobs were going to get cancelled, and there were a whole bunch of people, as I say, their jobs were on the line if I didn't get it. And I got that special permission, but Joe Biden took that away about a month ago for artists. So if I leave right now, I'm never going to be, well, not never, but I'm not going to be allowed to come back in, which is just interesting. And, you know, look, I'd love to come back and see people and see my cat and stuff. But, you know, I'm kind of happy just being here, so it's fine.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, the kind of, when I look, and this brings it back to play, when I look at the severe mishandling of this between probably December 2019 and kind of March 2020, and what could have been avoided if people had just got their act into gear and taken this seriously.
Right.
basically.
Yeah, there was a lot of sticking their head in the sand, wasn't there?
Oh yeah, like completely. And even I guess before that, I think in the run up to it, I think there were things in America where like Trump had just got rid of the kind of the medical people like who tell you that shit and know what their official titles are. And I'm sure, Boris idiot did exactly the same thing. So yeah, I mean, wow.
I know.
And it's just crazy how he just fell over. Like just literally the world just kind of went, okay.
It crumpled, and it's only just now sort of unfolding, isn't it?
Yeah.
Cautiously but irrevocably, as Boris keeps on saying. Twat.
I mean, what does that even mean?
That means he really doesn't want to have to lock it down again.
I know. And I guess, look, there's a lot of things I don't like about Boris Johnson. Obviously, I'm like, very left wing. But, I guess the one thing that I will say in the man's favour, in a way, is he's a libertarian. Yeah. He believes in freedom. He's literally, and that's partly because, he just wants to be able to do whatever he wants to do. It comes from a really personal place. I'm probably going to get sued now for like defamation. But, so I can see that actually I genuinely believe, obviously I'm from afar and watching the news, I genuinely believe he actually really doesn't want to lock things down. And he wants the world to happen, and he wants, the markets to work, and he wants the art or whatever, because, he clearly believes in freedom, and he has that belief in himself that he's some kind of 17th century dandy being a libertarian all over the world. Do you know what I mean? Like, he's ridiculous. I was reading that story about him, like, quoting Shakespeare when he was having an affair, and it's just like,
oh, what? No, wait, I don't know this. Is this public knowledge? No, tell me the story.
Yeah. It was in the newspapers at the weekend. So he's, he obviously has never been able to quite keep it in his pants, right? We hear about it all. I'm so getting sued for defamation.
Allegedly. We just say allegedly. But
allegedly.
I think it's quite a few allegations at this point, but yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, look, I don't know the man. I've never met him. I'm literally going on what I read. And I'm a writer, so obviously hyperbole is part of my shtick. But yeah, so yeah, apparently he's been having an affair with this or hadn't like a 4-year-old something affair with this Californian woman.
Jennifer Arcuri.
Yeah, her.
Yeah.
And so she did this hit, or someone did a hit piece where they quoted her at the weekend, where apparently he would like quote Shakespeare to her or something. I might get the story wrong because I try not to engage with him too much. But yeah, I read some like headline about something to do with him, getting stuck in with a Shakespeare quote.
As pillow talk, as
As pillow talk. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, well, and look, frankly, as a gay man, I think I'd rather the Shakespeare pillow talk than some of the ridiculous porny shit that I hear.
Oh, right, yeah. Maybe some middle ground could be found.
Some middle ground could be found. Yeah, so who knows?
Who knows indeed, yeah, who knows?
How did we even get onto that? Oh, lockdown libertarianism, Boris Johnson.
Yeah.
We're covering loads of ground here.
But did you manage to get, you got the visa, you had this crazy flying to the Netherlands and back and going to the States. And I think we hadn't quite finished that one. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, sorry, I was so prepared because I'd been on they'd been extending essentially a version of my ESTA because I was traveling back and forth, and they'd been extending since June under the kind of emergency whatevers, and because they knew that I had a visa in process, which was taking forever. Basically, they were just extending my ability to stay, and then I got the visa approval in July. I think it was like the day after my birthday, which is like really happy birthday me. And I was very excited, but then it slowly dawned on me that I then needed to have it issued, and that was a whole new ball ache. So I got as we were trying to get this sorted and it was becoming very clear that this was going to be very, very difficult, we got, and some friends here, we got a whole bunch of political people involved who were really trying to fight this cause for me.
That's amazing. You said senator? A senator?
A senator in California who's, I won't say who.
Yeah, no, of course. I don't
want to get them into trouble. And a house rep in New York, my house rep in New York, their office were trying to get it. And then a Polish ambassador got herself involved. And they're all trying to basically just go essentially to the London, or like, I think the American people were basically trying to say, this is ridiculous. Department of like Justice or whoever, this is ridiculous. Just issue, usually you wouldn't do this, but just issue this visa in America. Like normally you have to go and come back, but it's like, just issue it here. He can go to the United Nations, which is technically international ground. We have like an office or whatever there. Just give the guy his visa, basically. Like, don't force him to travel in the middle of a pandemic, basically, when we're seeing that travel is really problematic and upend someone's life. You're being ridiculous. Yeah. And like in the meantime, I'm talking to the Department of, I can't remember the exact title of the department, but the people who basically like look after borders.
Yeah, is that Homeland Security?
Yeah, Homeland Security, because they're basically saying, look, the head of Homeland Security is basically saying to me, I am happy to extend your temporary visa. Like, I have no problem with this. You're doing everything right. You're not a threat. You're not like trying to, illegally immigrate here. All your paperwork is in order. You've done everything properly. You're being held up by some ridiculous rules that people aren't prepared to bend, essentially, and they should. So this guy is essentially saying, like, I'm trying to make this work for you, but he's being told no. So essentially, I was kind of forced to leave. And then in the meantime, no other consulate around the world is prepared to see me because they don't. There was this stupid thing in the presidential proclamation that didn't count my visa class, but it counted other visa classes. So people, like some bureaucrats who were basically taking the word as the letter, were basically saying, we're going to cover all, non-resident work visas. But basically the people in the Netherlands, sensible, and they were basically saying, this doesn't cover that. That's not what this says. So yes, we can issue your visa, so come here. Basically.
So the Americans in the Netherlands.
In the Netherlands,
are the
and
only
then basically,
ones.
the culture in the Netherlands is that art is valid, essentially, and important, and just as important to the ecosystem. Because, as I say, there was a couple of really big projects that I was involved in, and jobs were actually on the line.
But they gave you it. That's brilliant.
Yeah. So it was really funny. I armed myself with this folder that was like 130 pages long that had all of my documentation and all of these appointments that I'd kind of tried to then get around the world. And as I say, the London consulate weren't having any of it. The only appointment they would give me was August the 25th, 2021. So I still wouldn't have it, basically, and they wouldn't expedite it. And the Netherlands gave me an appointment in January because they were basically like, how you have to do it is you have to get a standard appointment, and then you have to apply for an expedited appointment to push it up as an emergency issue if your job that you're supposed to start isn't within 30 days of that, is like more than 30 days away from that initial appointment. They'd see you, and one of the jobs was starting on the 1st of October, and we're in August now, basically. So I get the appointment in January, and then they allow me to expedite it, but you still don't know if they're going to issue it there and then. So I fly. And basically because of like the whole of the way the lockdowns are working and having to like stay somewhere for 2 weeks, and I'm not allowed to fly directly from America to the Netherlands. I'm only allowed to fly to Britain because I'm a British citizen. So I have to fly to Britain. I have to lock down for 2 weeks, and so I stayed with my friend in Oxfordshire and basically stayed in Liv, one of our co-producers on the play. So I stayed with Liv. And that was lovely. And I just stayed in a beautiful house there, and we just hung out for a couple of weeks. And then I flew to the Netherlands and stayed with my friend. I've got a really close friend there, actually, so that worked out well too. And then I go for this appointment really prepared, thinking I'm going to be really drilled, because I've been really warned by my lawyers that I was going to get a really, really hard time, basically. And they were really going to take me to account. Why is this important? Blah, 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 blah. And I was confident that, it was, and I was, being honest, and everything was in place. And they basically saw me for like 5 minutes.
It's fine. Of course we give you the visa.
They'd read the paperwork and they were like, this is completely valid, of course. And what had happened was, because of the way the dates had fallen, I think I'd overstayed by about 4 days, which I was really worried about. But it's because I didn't want to leave until I knew that I had this appointment. And the guy who runs like the East Coast border patrol thing is based out of JFK. So he told me, he was a really top dude. He was like, we'd been, in contact quite a lot, and we spoke on the phone a few times. And he was like, print out all these emails, just arm yourself, my team's on your side, basically. But he said, when you fly back to JFK, he's like, fly back between these hours, because I'll be in the office here in person. He's like, so just in case I get someone who's a little bit, sees this and thinks there's a worry, you can just say my name and they'll call me and I'll say we've been in conversation and we're good to go, just in case you get any problems. So I'm like, great. What I didn't know is that when you fly through Dublin, the US Border Patrol is actually in Dublin, essentially. So you do everything that you do in New York, but in Ireland.
Oh.
And the flight, and it's great. So basically, in a normal world, that would be great because you just, do your thing while you're waiting for your plane. And when you get to JFK, you just get off the plane and you just walk out.
Yeah.
But obviously, I didn't know that was a thing. And those guys there don't know me or my story. So I had like this really easy time in Amsterdam, and I basically could make it work that I could fly to Dublin and just swap over planes, and I wouldn't technically have to go and stay anywhere for 2 weeks because I was only in the airport, and just come directly back to New York. So I get to Dublin, and that's when I got the interview that I was expecting to have in Amsterdam.
The grilling.
And it was oh my God, it was tough. It was really tough. Basically, they grilled me and they held me there and they took away my passport and all my documentation and my visa and everything. And they stuck me in a room and asked me every conceivable question, and it was fine. They were great. And they were polite, but they were like, we have to do this because of the time that we're in. And I'm going, just call this guy in New York. Please just call this guy in New York. He's going to vouch for me. And then at one point they went away for 15 minutes and they've left me there with my phone or anything. I'm petrified. I'm like, they're going to send me back. But they didn't. Basically, they were amazing. And, they let me through. And
my God.
Now I have a 3-year visa, which is great.
Brilliant. Well, that's amazing. What a complicated series of chess moves that you had to do to go through that. I mean,
it was literally 3D chess.
It's so crazy. You're hopping around the world, but having to fucking self-isolate every step of the way.
Every step of the way. So actually never got to see anyone at all. Do you know what I mean? Because also the UK government are really hot on it. What was really interesting is, like, as I was traveling, was like really interesting to see what people take really seriously, what people don't. Like, so for instance, in England, one day I went to the shop because I needed to go and buy something. And, I was wearing a mask in the street as I went to the store. And people were looking at me like I was a nutter, basically. And like really weirdly, because, the culture, I don't know what it's like now, but the culture at the time was people weren't wearing masks in the street. Now, if you were in New York without a mask in the street, I mean, you would literally get yelled at. Like, someone would tell you what an F-word dick you are. But then in New York, our lockdowns haven't been as strict. We've been allowed to see people and do things and, create kind of little bubbles. So I've never really felt lonely because I think there was a bunch of us who hung out together anyway in New York, and we decided that we'd just be really safe and only hang out with each other and see each other regularly, essentially.
That's great.
So we didn't have that crazy one household, one person in the park for 15 minutes and 32 seconds rule that you guys have had. So that was really fascinating. And then obviously the Netherlands, they were just like gung-ho about the whole thing.
Super chill,
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
really super chill. I think they were only just starting to go into some kind of lockdown, like that week, basically, where they were like, we and their version of the lockdown was like, we're going to close football. Which I think was like the most horrific thing you could ever do to a Dutch person. You're like, going to watch the football? Yeah, exactly. So yeah, but
wow,
it got done, and I got to travel a little bit, and hopefully next time, I'm really hoping everything gets itself sorted out by the summer, because I'd just love to come home and see everyone. It's been a year since I've seen my friends and my family and stuff. And it'd just be like, with you guys from the play, it'd just be like really lovely to just like see everyone.
Yeah. June 21st, mate.
June 21st, is that the day?
Cautiously but irrevocably, June the 21st is the day.
Cautiously but irrevocably. Okay. Irrevocably. Of course he quotes Shakespeare to his girlfriends. Of course he does. But also Shakespeare's really obvious. You'd think, he obviously knows his classics. Why isn't he quoting Webster? I'd be way more impressed if he was quoting from like the Duchess of Malfi or the White Devil. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I bet he quotes Churchill all the time as well, just around the house, strutting around.
Because he thinks he's Churchill, doesn't he?
Yeah,
he really thinks he's Churchill. He always did.
Yeah. Exactly. And the one thing, I mean, we won't talk about politics too much, but the one thing that I think is kind of almost a saving grace, it's like he's been a twat and a racist and a cheater and a liar. Allegedly. Although some of this is in print, of course. His whole
print in his own newspapers.
Yeah, exactly. So his whole life. And he finally actually gets to become prime minister, which is like so fucking ridiculous that it's laughable that it somehow happens. And for me, the saving grace being like, he doesn't actually get to really do enjoy being prime minister, because straight away it's shitty lockdown and he has to be on TV apologising for how awful it is. I think this is his penance.
This is totally his penance. Karma works beautifully in a really beautiful way. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I hope so.
It's like Theresa May, like before him, like the shit show she got with Brexit, and I never particularly felt sorry for her, because I thought her time in the Home Office, she ruled over some of like the worst, and she deserved everything that she had.
Yeah.
But the irony there that she voted against Brexit, and then because she's like, she's the very definition in many ways of the banality of evil, that she's like one of those kind of public servants who will follow the letter because they have to and they've been voted to it, and will never apply any kind of personal judgment to that. So the fact that she had to deal with this thing that she didn't believe in but had to do it was just such poetic justice, and that was the sword she fell on. And similarly with this idiot of a man, that he's had to deal with it. As we say, it's just something beautiful about the fact that a libertarian has to deal with like really almost fascist levels of like controlling people in their lives and their movements.
Yeah, but and also having to push forward like the most generous social welfare state package ever from these.
When did Britain become a communist state? There's just something so beautiful about the fact that essentially Britain has become a socialist country. Do you know what I mean? There's something so beautiful about it.
It's so weird. Stephen, on the tube, there aren't adverts anymore. It is like, there's just statements from the government. Do you know what I mean? That's all.
Really?
Yeah, it's because no one's advertising anything anymore. So it's all like, keep your distance, wear your mask, stay home. Do you know, it really feels like you're like a different country. It's very weird.
I know, like Rishi Sunak basically being like the communist head of the purse. I mean, it's great. I mean, if nothing else, I mean, it just goes to show you that maybe something like oh my God, where's my vocabulary gone? What's that payment thing that everyone has been talking about? Where's my vocabulary gone?
Thing?
I haven't had enough coffee. Where you just give everyone like a universal basic
UBI,
income. Yeah. The fact that is kind of, there's a version of that right now. Certainly in America, there's a version. I mean, like, look, I'm in like this really weird place where I just have to go it alone because I'm not a citizen here, and I'm not there, so I just have to like work it out. But basically, like the benefits that some people are getting here is essentially just a universal basic income here, and it's been it's way more generous actually than in the UK. Wow. So a lot of my friends here are doing really like much better than they ever were when they were struggling artists, and they're able to make great art. So I know a bunch of people who've been making like films and just like doing shit basically because there's essentially a universal basic income, and so they're flourishing. There's kind of an artistic renaissance in a way.
Wow.
It's really interesting.
Brilliant. Well, I mean, speaking of which, why don't you tell me about some of the work that you've been up to? I mean, whatever you can talk about, obviously.
I mean, like, look, I mean, not a lot was happening like at first. I mean, when the play first got called off, I had a week of just hell where I think I had 3 plays, a TV series, and a potential film cancelled that week, which hurt like fucking hell. And then basically the main funding source of my residency died as well, like the week after. So I think in the space of about 3 weeks, I lost something like, and this makes it sound like I was earning at this level and I don't. I'd been, like making it work for years, but it was like the first year where it looked as if I was going to do well. And I think I lost something like 140 grand in like 3 weeks. And I was like, no. No. And I don't care. Like, I'm not, I don't give a fuck ultimately about money,
but it's
what that
about
represented was security.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? And it was like a year's worth of projects just kind of fell away. And I was like, what the fuck am I going to do? And that was hard. that was like really hard.
Yeah,
And the
I remember
panic of that.
when it happened. And like one of the first things I read was like, during the plague, Shakespeare wrote Hamlet. So, and I was like, I'm not feeling very inspired right now. Thank you very much. But after that initial, like you were saying, that horrible having everything taken away from you. How did you manage to rebound from that and get back to being creative?
Well, like I went into like, excuse me, sorry, my throat's a bit dry. Let me have just a drink of water. I went into a deep dark depression for a little while.
Yep, been there. might still be there.
Yeah. So I went into a very deep dark depression that wasn't great.
No, so awful. I'm sorry.
Oh no, it's all right. We can. One can talk about that in a whole other whatever. But yeah. And then, but what is beautiful actually about hitting a really dark place in your soul is and hitting a really because part of that as well was just in the run up to all of this happening, I suddenly found myself really busy in a way that was very exciting. And obviously people were very interested suddenly in working with me because of the success of the play. And, I've been building up a reputation over the last couple of years and, I've been doing like little bits of TV stuff and what have you. So people were like suddenly really interested in working with me. And so I'd had a lot of projects on. So in the run up to play and then moving to America, I was flying back and forth with fair regularity, and I was really busy and making a new life here and all that kind of stuff. So I was also fucking exhausted. So I kind of crashed and burned in a kind of really big way in like April and May last year. And what was really good about that is that I was forced to just stop. Basically, to just not do anything, not do anything for like a month or two, basically. Yeah. And that was really great on like a really personal level. And it gave me a place where I could start to rebuild up all of those kind of really teeny niggles that like get into your soul and fuck us up daily, right? So that gave me the opportunity to do that in one way. So that's been really great. But also in terms of creativity, I had the freedom to do what I wanted to do for the first time since I did my master's degree at Central, which I remember when I moved over from, before I was a writer, I was a producer. And one of the best things about the kind of year or so I took when I went to Central to kind of retrain as a writer, it was one of the most fruitful experiences of my life because I suddenly got to have a year where I got to do creatively everything that I wanted. It was all on like my
impetus.
It was no one was telling me what to write. No one was telling me what to do, and I wasn't responding, whether overtly or covertly. I wasn't responding to what I thought the industry wanted or needed. Which, as I've as my career has grown, and I've been doing well. I'm really lucky. But part of that thing has been I'm responding to what the industry expects or what people are telling me in meetings or whatever. What happened basically was I got to just write what I wanted, which I haven't been able to do for ages because also I banked up, especially in terms of theatre. I had 3 plays at various stages and another one that I'd written that was just sitting there. So for all intents and purposes, I've got and I've got obviously the backlog of my work as well. So for all intents and purposes, it was very much like I don't need to. When the theatre opens or whatever, we'll do One Jewish Boy again. My play Run, there was like a whole bunch of, and there's been a whole bunch of productions around the world of that have been starting and stopping. So they were going to go. Velocity, the play that I was writing at the museum, that was going to go up again. Giants, which is this thing that I've been doing with Roman Clay, who are really exciting theatre company. That looked as if that was going to happen again at some other point. So I just got to sit down and write what I wanted. So I basically have written a whole new bunch of work, essentially. So that was kind of fun. And I was doing that essentially for free, basically. Right. Just because I wanted to just get ahead of the game. Then in August last year, I got a commission really randomly from this really cool science and art theatre company here in the UK. so that was great because it was suddenly like, oh, I got a paid job,
Yeah.
which was really, really nice. So that was ticking over. And then I have like my life is full of tragic stories. There is a really, really sad story about my childhood best friend. Basically, when I was a little boy, she was this is really dark.
Okay.
Basically, where we're about to go.
I'm strapping in. It's called The Bliss of the Abyss. Don't worry.
Yeah. So like people like really trigger warning, because this is going to get dark. So my childhood best friend, she was murdered by her mother, basically, when she was about 8 and I was about 5. And I remember her. I remember her being there, and I remember her not being there. And I remember asking my mum where she'd gone at some point, and my mum said, because I was still a kid, she'd gone to heaven, and she'd tell me about it when I was a little bit older. And she told me the sad story when I was a teenager, basically about what had happened. And her mum had like really major mental health issues that just kind of had been failed by the system, essentially. And yeah, she sadly ended up killing her daughter, and then committing suicide in prison. Really, really dark. But I've always wanted to honor this girl in some way, basically. So I'd been part of my residency, obviously, I'm doing space stuff, because I'm working with astrophysics, and I've been wanting to write a sci-fi movie for a while. And I've been working with this. I'm so sorry about my throat. I don't know what's going on.
It's fine.
It's certainly not COVID. I got the vaccine a couple of weeks ago.
Nice.
So yeah, it's good. I'm a Johnson's baby.
Just the one and done. Very nice.
Just the one and done, but like fever dreams for 3 days. Anyway, yeah. So there's this director, Ryan Andrews, who we've been wanting to do something for a little while, and we tried to get a couple of features up. And because he makes music videos and I make theatre, people like, we need to see more like narrative short film from you guys. And Liv, who, my friend, who was also one of the co-producers on the show and the producer of the original show, she's been wanting to cross over into theatre, into film. So the three of us were like talking about what we could do together. And, there was a pot of money there. So we were like, let's make a short together. So I wrote this short about a girl who her sister, basically taking the story of my friend, but making it her little sister. And that little sister was obsessed by space and Jupiter in particular, and it's set in the future. And essentially her sister, to honor, so the younger sister's called Sienna, the older sister's called Amber. Sienna is the one who follows the story of my friend, and she's murdered by their mother. So to honor Sienna, Amber becomes an astronaut and becomes the first woman when life is found during the Europa Clipper, which is a mission that's supposed to go in 2025 to Europa. And we kind of project that life is found in the oceans on Europa, and it's 10 years after that. And she's an astrobiologist, and she's the first person to go and do this mission in honor of her sister. So we've been making that film over the pandemic, basically, and that's been the main thing. So we've been making it as a short whilst I've been, Liv managed to go away and get a little bit of money, so I could kind of sit down and write the feature version whilst we were finishing off we shot it just before lockdown, but we did a few little solo pickups basically over the last year and stuff. And then we've been doing all the special effects. So basically we finished that film. That's been the main thing that has been keeping us going over lockdown. And we finished it like 3 days ago.
Whoa.
Yeah, just in time for the Cannes short film deadline. So we entered Cannes yesterday. Oh, wow. Basically, like by the skin of our teeth.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, and I finished the movie feature version of it like a week and a half ago. And so that's out with a couple of script editors that I know and script readers, so I can, and with my agents, basically. So yeah, I've mainly been doing that and this other little project. I've just been commissioned to write this. There's a really cute theatre here that does puppetry stuff. I think they're going to be okay for me to talk about this because we're not announced yet. And actually, they're having a conversation with my agent today. But, they're going to be fine about me talking about it. Do you know the story of Herschel and the Hanukkah Goblins?
No, I do not. That sounds great.
Oh, my God, Rob. It is so gorgeous. Text me your address and I'm going to send you a copy on Amazon. It is the most gorgeous story. It's like kind of set in Europe, I guess, in the 1900s, and it's about this guy Herschel, and he's going home to the shtetl basically, and at Hanukkah, and he gets to the top of the hill and he looks down at the village and he can't see any Hanukkahs lit, and he's like, "What? It's the first day of Hanukkah." And he gets down there and they're basically, the goblins are in the synagogue and they won't let us. They hate Hanukkah. They won't let us celebrate Hanukkah. So he basically has to go in and fool the goblins for 8 days so he can save Hanukkah, and it's the most delightful story. Like, it's like this beautiful little kid story written by this guy, Eric Kimmel, and it's so gorgeous. And anyway, one of my friends is basically the artistic director of this puppet theatre in Maryland, and she has a beautiful, almost Jim Henson-like aesthetic. And I'd never normally write for this kind of audience, essentially. So out of my armory. And she got in touch and she's like, I thought of this story and, I got the rights to it. We want to do it as our Hanukkah show this year. And, you were the first person that sprung to mind because of your kind of little twisted sensibility. I think we can do something really magical. Would you do it? And I'm like, fuck yeah. That'd be like, it's something I never consider, something really, really fun. So I've got a meeting with the author next week, who's this delightful little Brooklyn Jewish guy who now lives out west. Who's literally do what you want with it, basically. Right. And he's like, when I wrote it, one of the things I really didn't do was there weren't enough female characters in it. And it was really funny because one of the things I was thinking of is that I wanted the final battle to be with a goblin queen. Do you know what I mean? Because I just like the idea of the most powerful deities are always the female ones. Yeah. You know what I mean? In our Judaism, what I love is that we have the Shekinah, which is the female god, the god that walks amongst us, and the only kind of female variation of a god that we get in any Abrahamic religion. And, because she's the one that walks amongst us, as far as I'm concerned, she's the most powerful one and the one that I think of whenever I'm in synagogue. So, that's going to, and I think I might bring her into it as well. So, I'm about to start that. And then in the meantime, I've been having conversations with, all of our producers about what we're going to do next. So, I think you'll be pleased to hear that our guys are very much on board with the fact that we're going to be doing this, One Jewish Boy next year. And yes. And, Giants, which is the one I've been doing with Rob and Clay, that looks like we're going to be doing something in Australia next year. So I'm excited about that. And, the people who are doing Runner Up, and we want to do Velocity. So, yeah.
Busy March. How do you fit all this in? I mean, that's
badly. I'm behind on all my deadlines. I owe so many people work. My friend Dan who I'm staying with, has just written this amazing piece in the New York Times that we're trying to option for a TV series, and my writing partners here in America are literally waiting for me. Oh, and I've also been doing a cooking show.
What?
Oh my God, I completely forgot about that. Okay, so my friend Lucy Cole, who is just awesome, she does this cooking show, and I did, just as a laugh, she's a stand-up comedian, she's fucking hilarious. And I went on as a guest about 2 months ago, and our chemistry was just insane, and I think the show did really, really well that we were on. So we've been making our own cooking show. We're going to call it, because she's a comedian, we're going to call it Something Smells Funny, basically. So we just shot episode 1, which is co-titled A Playwright and Comedian Walk Into a Kitchen. And the idea being that basically we just kind of just cook shit and have a laugh and,
fun.
Be dickheads in a kitchen. So yeah, we've been doing that as well. So essentially, I do it all by the skin of my pants, being vaguely unfocused. and every time I'm late for a deadline, asking for another 3 days and smiling at them charmingly and hoping that they'll know that it's just because I'm trying to do a bunch of stuff and make sure the quality of that stuff is good.
How much do you sort of stick to a routine? Are you I'm up at 9 and 9:30 till 11 I write, then I take my constitutional and then I'm back. Do you know what I mean?
Take my constitutional. So as anyone who follows me on Instagram will know, I adopted a puppy about 6 weeks before lockdown happened.
Shout out to Casper.
Little Casper. Oh my God, he's so gorgeous.
Can't wait to meet him.
So, and when I adopted him, he's a rescue from Kentucky. And when I adopted him, because we were about to go into rehearsals, I asked the foster parents if they could hold on to him until I got back from England with the play, and they were like, no, we can't. If you want him, you got to take him now. So I was like, fine, okay, I'll take him. And then how I dealt with being away is I just put him in puppy training school. The first time, and then the second time, like, my boyfriend looked after him. Because of Casper, I have to follow a routine, basically. So, however, it slightly goes to pot now because Casper's now a teenage boy. So I live with a teenage boy and everything that entails. And the major thing that entails is that little bugger is not getting up in the morning.
Of course.
Force him out of bed. I mean, literally force him up. So we get up somewhere between the 7:30 and 8:30 mark. And then I need coffee and the morning news, and just to answer emails and social media and, catch up with London, because I'm also managing a career in two countries, in two cities, essentially. I've been trying to make sure that my London career is still working and I'm still part of that scene whilst being in New York.
Right.
So mornings are really useful. And then we go for a really long walk in the morning, basically. And that's a great thing because I can get some exercise and I can think and I can plan my day. And then I tend to just sit down and work really solidly until maybe 1:30ish, and then I'll have some lunch. So it tends to be, I'm the most creative in the mornings, basically, just after I've had my coffees. So that'll be hard creative time. And I follow the Pomodoro technique, basically, which is where you write for 20, or you work solidly for 25 minutes with no distractions, and then you take 5 minutes off. And I use an app for that. And then, so basically the idea is that you do 25-minute rounds of work with 5 minutes to go to the toilet or grab your coffee or check your emails or social media or whatever. And then every 4 cycles, you get 25 minutes for a little bit longer. So I do the Pomodoro for a few hours, and I actually managed to get quite a lot done. You could probably get a morning's work following that will get me as much work as I would in a full day without it. And then in the afternoon, after he's had his kind of lunchtime walk, that's when I do the admin stuff and the pitch, because obviously, as a creative, I'd say before the pandemic, a good 25% of my time was taken over with just career admin, including pitching for the next bunch of work. That's more 50-50 right now because there are so few opportunities and there are so many more people out there now in work and whatever. And also I've been trying to find representation as well. So I've managed to get American rep, but also trying to look for a manager and all that kind of stuff because things work slightly different here. So doing all that stuff is that's the afternoon job, basically. And then Casper gets fed again around 5-ish, and then we go for another long walk, basically, and then the evenings on my own to kind of just chill out. And I've been very good at being boundaried about what's work time and what's personal time and making sure, I think before all this happened, I remember in January, some nights I was pulling all-nighters and all that kind of shit. I'm never going to do that again. It's so unhealthy.
Yeah. I remember you sort of occasionally turning up to a rehearsal or a meeting or something, just completely bleary-eyed, and I'd be like, "Stephen, you're right." You'd be like, "I haven't gone to bed yet. I've been crazily rewriting this whole thing." And I'd be like,
crazily rewriting. Actually, I remember there was one day. I think it was the first week of rehearsal, and do you remember I had that really nightmare stopover in Copenhagen, and I hadn't slept for 36 hours, and we had the first rehearsal, and I had to do a rewrite that night for the second rehearsal, and I managed to do it. And I think it was the second rehearsal when I was really tired, and I don't know who it was. And I'm not. I feel like I'm mainly really measured, and I don't tend to be stroppy or be unreasonable. Do you know what I mean? I think I have a genuine. I hope, touch wood, I'm touching my head. I hope people see that I genuinely have a good nature. And
no, you're horrible. You're a nightmare. You're a troll.
I'm a nightmare. But that afternoon, I was a troll. I think it was Asher I shouted at, who I adore. But I shouted at someone. I mean, I was really uncool. I was literally "Don't fuck with me right now." And I don't think the question was that unreasonable. And I remember going home that night just thinking, I was such a fucking arsehole this afternoon. And it was literally because I'd had no sleep. And I think I misheard the question, which I'm sure was perfectly reasonable. What's my motivation or something? I don't know, you're the fucking actor. You know. Which I'm never I'm always like I promise, like I'm collaborative, and I want to give, it's my directors and my teams having autonomy in the room. I know that there's a point where I just need to get the fuck out of there and leave you guys to it, and just let you enjoy it and enjoy. It's like the way I go into things is, we all go in, learn the process, work out the parameters of where we're in, know the material, know what we have, and then I'm going to fuck off and I'm going to let you do your thing and work it out, and then I'm going to come back and we're going to fall upon things, and that's going to be really exciting, and I try and.
For the record, yes, this is the Stephen that I know. Yes, this is how he is.
And I'm not precious about like line changes, because I understand that language is so different, and we're going to find stuff, and I'll work with it basically. As long as I'm a part of that process, I'm really happy to be a part of that process, and I'll always listen to things that aren't working or whatever, because things in your head are very different when you start getting them into a room. And actually, I love rehearsals. I kind of wish I was in them a little bit more, but also know that your presence as a writer can be looming, and I don't want to give that pressure. But for me, it's just really fucking fun getting stuck in. But I think that I was such a dick. Oh my god, I was such a dick.
But you're only human, aren't you? I mean, you literally, like you said, you were stretched. It's like, well, I think they've found studies that like if lack of sleep gets to a certain point, it's like as bad as being very drunk, like the impairment. Lots of crashes on the road and stuff. It's just because you're tired. It's literally like your body is starting to malfunction. So of course, like your brain's going to as well, and you're going to hear things wrong and snap and all the rest of it. I'm really glad to hear that you've kind of gone through that and found like a really healthy way to explore your creativity. That's really good.
I think parameters have to be important, and it's really interesting because when I talk about, I'll go. I'm often asked to go in and kind of be like a guest lecturer or whatever at various institutions, and just go in and talk about how one playwrights from a professional place. And one of the things I talk about quite a lot is that it's not just all creativity. It's not just kind of going in there going I'm so arty, I'm so wonderful, look at how amazing and creative I am. It's actually, you got to think of it in terms of like architecture, for instance. Like you got to build the structure first, you got to put like the bare bones together. That's the work. The creativity comes about where you put the door, where you put the window, how you're going to design the walls. And I'd never actually applied that sorry, excuse me, that same structure to the way I approach my work. And I was being very fast and loose. I mean, I've never been fast and loose with deadlines. I've always respected that because because I have to respect my own time. I think it's really important that I respect other people's time and vice versa. But I would be very fast and loose with how I worked with my time. So, I would sometimes, I was finding that in New York, for instance, and moving here and trying to create a kind of New York family, if you like, in a way, that I would be working all day in the museum as part of my residency. And then I'd be, out from kind of dinner and then partying until like 1 or 2 in the morning or something. And then I'd go back to the museum and I'd work until like maybe 6, 7 in the morning. And then I'd sleep in my office for like 3 hours. And then do meetings and then do all the things. And I'm just like, that is so unhealthy. Yeah. So in a way, the pandemic has been really good at going, you need to apply the same kind of parameters that you would apply to the actual work, to how you approach the work.
Right. And to your life, to your,
to my life and to my practice. And just having downtime. Downtime is so important. Because if you can't take that walk, I mean, look, I'm really lucky. I live really close to Hudson Park on the river. Again, if you follow my Instagram, like all I post is the same bloody picture from the same bloody pier on the Hudson River, and my dog being a dickhead, with the occasional shout out about an anniversary, about something I might have done. But I'm so lucky to have that river just there, because that space every day to just go and look at the water and walk for like 30 minutes up and down that river and just clear my head is just really special and really good for the mental health, because obviously, as I kind of alluded to before, I had like a pretty big mental health crash in the spring. And what was great from that was basically going, I'm never going to let this happen again. This is so devastating to the people, not just to myself, but the people around me who care. Like, this can't keep happening in my life. I have to get on top of this. So I think in a way, having the world stop meant that there was lots of time, to really tackle those things. Because essentially my attitude was how I came out of the dark personal and the dark creative space was to go, in a weird way, this is an opportunity. I've gone into this with a really successful play in the West End that was once again critically acclaimed and was, like, by the end, I don't know if you know this, by the end of that week, we were sold out for the entire run.
I did not know that, really.
Yeah, we were fucking sold out, like for the whole thing. So it was going to be like this, like both critical and commercial fucking hit, where the guys were even thinking about coming back to the West End after we did the tour into a bigger venue, basically. So I went into, and the other things that were going on in my life. So I went into the pandemic actually on a high in a weird way. Reputationally, people were interested in working with me. So I came in a really good place. So actually what this year has given me the opportunity to do is actually just put all my ducks in a row. Mm-hmm. So when things finally start up again, I can go into it looking after myself better and actually armed with a bunch more stuff, basically.
Amazing.
Because lest we forget, this industry is fickle, and I've probably only got a good 5 years. So I just need to go in, do everything, and you get the fuck out, and then go and do my PhD and find a nice teaching role somewhere and have babies. Do you know what I mean? Because this industry takes you in, puts you on a platform, and then spits you out, basically. And something stupid I've come up and said or done is gonna come up at some point, and I'm just gonna get fucking cancelled.
Oh, no, you're not gonna get cancelled, are you? Well, yeah.
I've
go on.
I've never been horrible or mean or hurt anyone, but I've probably said some really daft shit that I never meant and thought was a really close to the line joke.
Well, I don't think you've said that on this one, so I don't think you're going to get cancelled from this time together. But I can't speak for what you said in the past, Stephen.
I don't think I've done anything really bad or said anything really bad.
I think those are famous last words that every single person who's ever been cancelled has probably said.
I don't think I've done anything really. I know that I've never done any of the sexual or bullying shit. Actually, I've been on the other end of that shit.
Right.
But I've never. But I might have said something dodgy. Do you know what I mean? That I thought was funny.
Yeah.
Because also actually as we go into comedy and actually we talk about this slightly more broadly, I've decided that we're talking about this more broadly, by the way.
Okay. Thank you.
I do genuinely believe that comedy everything has to be up for grabs. We have to be able to laugh about everything.
Yeah, I agree.
But I'm not sure that is right now, that is universal.
No,
and obviously, I'm not a dickhead. I don't want to hurt people's feelings. Do you know what I mean? I'm not sure I'd make jokes about the Holocaust, and I definitely, not make jokes, and, I wouldn't use the N-word or anything like that. I'm a sensitive person.
Yeah.
But I'm sure I've probably said some... probably the stuff I've done because I'm gay. I've probably told some very outrageously homophobic jokes.
But that's one of the few things that's left is you're allowed to make fun of your own group, right? That hasn't quite been taken away yet, although it does sort of loom as a possibility. What do you think of this analogy? This is the way I've been thinking about it. Is that comedy is like a tightrope. And everyone on it is walking on this tightrope, trying to make people laugh. And the problem is the slackness changes, and it can suddenly get very taut or very loose. And if you've just been, if you've not been paying enough attention, you're going to fall off. What do you think?
I think that's a great analogy. And actually, I think we can apply that to life, basically. But you know what I mean? Just in human interactions anyway. I think a boundary line is really important. And I actually think you can probably step up to the line. And in some instances, you should step up to the line and things should be challenged and and what comedy is really great at. Comedy is really good at making us look at things and focus on things. But I think the thing about the slackness is it has to be generous. And I think that's where, on a serious note, I don't really think I'm going to be cancelled, because I definitely believe that if ever I've been close to the line on any subject, and I'm not scared, as we've seen with the work that I make, I'm not scared of being controversial, and I'm not scared of putting myself on the line, and I'm not scared of putting myself in a hard position to tackle something important, but I will always do it with generosity. And I think that's where that slackness is, that maybe some of those people haven't always been generous, basically.
Yeah.
And I think that it has to come, And like, I guess one case in point, I guess, was the Kathy Griffin thing where she did the decapitation of Trump. I mean, was that too far? I don't know. I genuinely don't know.
I've
Because it
gone
was
back
also
and forth on
funny.
that. Yeah, it definitely was
It
funny.
was also funny, but also he was still a human being. Like, like when Margaret Thatcher died, the ding dong, the witch is dead jokes that were going around.
Yeah.
Like, look, I grew up in the north, I'm in the Midlands, but it's the same thing. North of Watford in the 80s. Like, I saw firsthand the devastation that Margaret Thatcher's policies caused on small towns.
Yeah.
Firsthand. But do we celebrate a human being who has family? Do we celebrate their death as a good thing? I don't know.
It's so hard to work that out.
I think I may have partaked as well, but like in reflection, like, it's still a fucking human being.
Yeah.
And then you weigh it up with the intellectual side, like she actually didn't give a fuck about the lives that she ultimately ended. But I don't know. I mean, Donald Trump is an evil fascist man who has done some really bad things in the world. Should we be joking about his decapitation? I honestly don't know. Like when he got deplatformed on Twitter, I worried about that. I worried about what that created.
Yeah.
Like, yes, he needed to be shut up, but should anyone be should a tech company ultimately decide to deplatform a person? It's not that I don't think that he shouldn't abide by their rules, and it's not that I don't think that what he was saying was terrible. He incited a riot. He's an evil, hateful man. And we were talking about it last night. About, I actually think his kids are way worse, but because they're acting in a more politic way, he's acting. He's pure id. He only thinks about himself. Do you know what I mean? Like he's kind of very strategic, but only in a personal way. But what the message of that censorship could come back if it's not agreed with by business or whatever, I worry about where that takes us for sure. Like when you follow that down a road of what that could do, and I think I talk about it in the play. I am very worried about the left doing the work of the right.
Yeah,
I'm very worried about that, and I'm worried that the right let us do it. That the right know how to manipulate us into doing their work for them. Things such as censorship and deplatforming and all that kind of stuff. And again, that doesn't mean that I'm like this huge believer in free speech, because I think free speech leads to hate speech. So I don't know that I believe in free speech either. I believe in a version of free speech where hate speech gets punished. But should that be ultimately taken away? I don't know, because if you take something away, that doesn't give us the opportunity to talk about it. And I think we have to talk about it.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, there's that old maxim that good speech is the only counter to hate speech, right? Or bad speech.
Yeah. And it's like, what's that woman called? The really heinous British one. Who is really fascist and right.
Oh, Katie Hopkins.
Katie Hopkins. Yeah. so sorry about my throat.
No,
she's
fine.
awful. She's
Haiti Hopkins, I've heard her called.
Yeah, her. So when we were doing Run, I can't remember what the it was when I was at the bunker, and we were going to have a panel. I can't remember what the panel was about, but it was something that she'd been talking about. And I said, you know what, we should invite Katie Hopkins. Basically, we should, but and I was like, but the counter to that is then we invite all of these people to debate her. No one would talk to her. No one would people were very much like, if she comes, we're not coming. Basically, we're not going to give her a platform. And I understand that. I do understand that giving her a platform is ultimately spreading a word, but my approach to that conversation, and in the end we decided not to do it, but my approach was very much, we should give her a platform, but we should also crowd that platform with other voices so we can diffuse the message.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I genuinely don't know. My thought with Donald Trump was we should flood Donald Trump with as much counter Donald Trump as we can, basically, and point out, if we'd, sorry, I interrupted you there. Let me just finish this point and then go on. If we'd in America, because I'm really engaged with American politics, obviously, had been better on the left when he had all that stuff with Putin, if we started calling him, for instance, Comrade Trump in the press and ridiculing him in exactly the same way as he would ridicule people on the left, that kind of thing would have really been helpful, essentially. Do you know what I mean? We're not very good, because on the left we're so worried, not worried, we hold honor like being honourable to such a high extent that sometimes we don't attack in the way that the right would attack us. And I think that we should. Essentially, we should ridicule the way that they ridicule us, because then we diffuse their message. Basically,
right.
by deplatforming their message, we give them an echo chamber, because they go and find another platform where it's just them and they get no counter argument whatsoever. And in those places, that's where you get things that happen like January the 6th. Yeah. Anyway, go on. You were going to say something and I carried on my thoughts. Sorry.
Oh, I don't know how to respond to all of that. That's a lot. I have loads of thoughts, but yeah, some of them have come and gone, I think, in the whole time you're talking. I think... Should there be unfettered freedom to lie? And no, right? That's so. It seems logical that is at least one way that speech has to be limited in some way, because unfettered lying leads to hatred, and then that's a slope that goes all the way to fascism.
For sure. And I very much liked that it was like, this is a lie, and here you can find a link to the counter argument. I thought that was great. Basically.
Yeah, that was really good. But the problem, I guess the problem is it wasn't stopping him, was it? And no. I mean, have you looked at any of the like the Breitbarts or Infowars or any of those websites?
Oh yeah. There's a really terrible one called Godlike Productions.
Oh, I don't know that one.
Where it's unfettered right-wing hatred, like literally death to left-wing people. Basically, and it's sexist and misogynist and transphobic and homophobic, and everything is bad. Basically. I mean, like, it is vile. Actually, I reported it to the FBI because they were literally talking about getting guns. I landed on there, and they were literally talking about starting a revolution, and it was like, this is dangerous.
Yeah,
basically,
that's the shit that was going on Parler as well, wasn't it? It was like coordinating attacks and stuff like that. It's like there's definitely this shouldn't be. Yeah, that shouldn't be allowed. There's no way. I mean, there's
no way.
There's no way, right? I mean, what's the benefit of saying no? That is allowable. Is there is there a counter argument? I can't think of one.
Well, then we know who to arrest. Do you know what I mean? Then we absolutely know that we can find that IP address, we can find that person, and we can go around to their house and put them in prison for like literally, extremism and terrorism.
Yeah.
So only in that, but yes, and that's the grey line. Like I don't know, because that should absolutely not be allowed. You should not be allowed to have a platform where you can go and organise the death of people that don't politically align with you based on a lie. So yeah, it's just tough.
Yeah,
it's really hard.
It is hard because we think of the examples of like, okay, here's a nice extreme case where we can say, well, this is definitely not, and then the further you edge back from that towards something approaching the centre ground, the harder and greyer it becomes, and the less you're able to apply a blanket rule, and it has to be case by case. And then as soon as it's case by case, people cry foul or favouritism because one judgment is seen as different from the other, even though they're the same. That they look the same in some way, or there's some mitigating factor, or race comes into it, or gender, or sexual orientation, all of these kinds of things. And then, like you say, then that's when the left really eats itself and destroys itself and holds people to standards that sometimes just seem impossible. Especially if it's sort of something off the cuff or something sort of throwaway, treated as if it's some big statement or being. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually then in the wider sphere, what that then breeds, which then brings it all the way back to politics, is the left isn't always very good at banding together because we're so caught up in nuance, rightly so. But that means that when it comes down to it, we can't always agree. And so we can't get behind something because of principle. And then, again, this is what I worry about. We then do the work of the right by actually allowing the right to empower because we didn't agree with like 3 things out of the 10 things. So we didn't vote.
Yeah, and that's definitely the situation here. I don't see how a Labour government is going to get into power anytime soon. But over there, I mean, he's fine. Do you know what I mean? It's not gonna be enough though. Like being fine is not going to be enough. The groundswell of support that the Tories just default have there has to be something more to overcome that. Like it has to be, you know, what's a big reason Joe Biden won? Because he's not, you know, they chose the most central, least quote unquote woke candidate, and he beat Trump. Why? Well, because Trump was so awful and so flagrant, and then there was a fucking siege on the fucking Capitol as if you needed proof enough. And now he
was the only one who could do it.
But he was the only one who could do it.
None of those others would have done it.
So it's like the truly progressive agendas aren't actually as popular as the left wants them to be. And the reality is, in order to get elected, you need to be popular. That's just like, that's a default thing. So I mean, it's managed to happen. I mean, it squeaked by in the States, didn't it? You know, Georgia was like in like a final Hail Mary, but now you're in the unique position.
Stacey Abrams.
I mean, amazing, right?
Amazing. The work she did, that like groundswell of activism, that's what you need.
Yeah.
And that's what didn't happen in 2016.
Yeah.
Because, you know, AOC wasn't in power yet, and, you know, Stacey was doing a thing or whatever, but the people that essentially the Bernie supporters and the people on that side of the party weren't doing enough groundswell support. And they learned from that. That was a great thing. They learned from that mistake this time. So in those kind of more swing states, they got on the ground and they made it happen. And Stacey Abrams, I mean, she deserves, they don't do knighthoods here, but she deserves one for the work that she did in Georgia.
Yeah, basically. I'm sure she'll get a congressional medal, some something like that for sure.
And the fact that she's gone into like my politics for the foreseeable, I'm going to stay out of big office. My politics for the foreseeable is changing this at grassroots level. I mean, that's we need more people like that. We need more people who really fucking care.
Absolutely, basically. Because I mean, the law. This is getting a bit specific, I guess, for some people. But I was just reading about the voter restriction laws that they've passed in Georgia, because it's still Republican-held local government. Like they've made it illegal to give food to people in line. Illegal.
Yeah, illegal. Yeah. You can't give food to people in line, basically, because they don't want. They don't want what happens. They don't want. They essentially let's call it what it is. They don't want black people, because they've basically taken out all of the black voting spaces. They don't want black people waiting in line for 12 hours like they did in the last election, because that's where the vote is. It's literally voter suppression. Yeah,
exactly. Like, so it's a real fight, but like, but you've got this 2-year window basically now in the States of like a left-wing majority just about in all 3 branches, right? Yeah. And so something can happen, I believe. I'm hopeful.
They're letting Mitch McConnell still wield far too much power in the filibuster. But I mean, I think we got to move out of executive order territory and get some stuff actually put into law. But but actually, just to bring it back to Britain, where most of the people are going to be listening, I think that, you know, these examples kind of sit the same in the UK. I mean, you know, the right also want voter suppression. They also want to make it really difficult, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, we have that version of the party political lines where, you know, the Tory party will always fucking vote with, you know, they'll follow the whip. Whereas Labour won't always do that. And then the fact remains that we only have in the UK one right-wing, you know, major party, but we have like 3 left-wing ones. So the left vote is just always going to be split, basically. So there either needs to be more right-wing parties or fewer left-wing parties.
Well, they've got Lawrence Fox has got his new party, hasn't he? So maybe some people will vote for that.
Man, he's the new Katie Hopkins. What's he doing?
I have no idea. It seems very, very strange. Have you ever met him?
No. I've battled him on Twitter, and I'm like, "What are you doing?" Yeah, of course. Just call him a dickhead. I'm not scared of just going, "You're a fucking wanker, mate. Go away. Be quiet." I don't know. I mean, we always had the problem I guess the problem that we have with Labour is there is a slight, I don't know what the new government's like because I haven't been there, like the new party, like, because I haven't been there for it. Yeah. But obviously I was there for very many of the Corbyn years. And obviously anyone who's seen the play knows that I've very much struggled with Jeremy Corbyn, but ultimately voted for him. But there's an arrogance with the Labour Party, that it's their way or no way, basically. And It fell down into 2010 when Gordon Brown wouldn't work with the Liberal Democrats. It fell down every single election that Jeremy Corbyn lost because he wouldn't give. Basically, he wouldn't give, and it's you can't just go in going, this is it. It's so like old school socialist man saying this is what we're going to do, and that's not good. You need to do what Joseph Biden is doing, which is basically coming in with a kind of fairly middle ground positive agenda, but then actually enacting quite great left wing. Some of the shit that he's just like thrown in is just like, mate.
Yeah, I know. It's amazing.
Pretty left wing.
Yeah.
Like, I thought you were way more moderate than this. I'm impressed.
No, it's some exciting changes. Definitely, I follow it quite closely. Obviously, because Caitlin's American, and we're definitely going to live in the States at some point as well. And
come!
Oh, I can't wait. I mean, I was just there, obviously, but that was for a very different sort of situation.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
Yeah,
so we get to see each other.
Yeah, no, I'll be back.
Caitlin still here?
She is. No, she's back here now.
She's back with you now. Yeah.
We're going to be back in October though. So
okay, great. We'll hang out. That'll be fun.
Definitely. You can introduce me to all your cool new New York family.
Yeah. So what you guys who are listening maybe don't know is that Rob and Caitlin keep an amazing running Excel spreadsheet of things to do and places to go.
That's right.
in New York, and it was so helpful when I moved here.
Isn't
like, I want to do this thing, I want to do that thing. So we should do some of that shit together that I haven't done yet.
Yes. Fucking yes. Oh, I have to say, Stephen, talking to you, you're full of energy and optimism and bursting at the seams with ideas, but managing to harness it. I'm quite inspired, I have to say. And
sure.
I am. I'm not just buttering your bread. Because like even last night I made the mistake of checking my emails at like 10:30, and I got some.
Never do that.
Oh yeah. And I got some good news professionally, right? I've been offered a voice thing, which I can't really talk about, but it's very good. But then then that catapults me into that headspace of like thinking about it and looking up and then I'm on my phone and I'm looking at the thing and I'm like, okay, what can I do? And before I know it, it's 3 a.m. And I think I have to take a page from your book here and just be like, well, I'm not going to be checking the email at 10:30 p.m. because I'll do it tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. Like what is the difference between 10:30 and 9:30? Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like nothing. Because if you're sending emails, no one wants to walk in to the office to an email that was sent at 3 a.m. No one wants that shit. Unless you're in another country. No, like you're just gonna be like, dude, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Red flag.
Yeah, red flag. I honestly believe work hours are 10 till 6 and they shouldn't go beyond that. They shouldn't.
What do you think of the 4-3? They're doing this thing in Spain. I'll let you go in a second. I know we've been talking for an hour and 20 minutes. Amazing. What do you think about like alternate work theory? So we've got UBI. We've got in Spain they're doing this 4 days on, 3 days off trial with lots of big companies.
That's great.
What do you think? I mean, it seems, and now that we've had all this working at home and there's going to transition back to office, but I feel like it's also going to be more hybrid now and less, there'll still be some in person, but there'll be more flexibility and less sort of time spent commuting when we don't need to, and alternate models of
all the good shit.
All the good shit, right? All the good shit that sort of creative people have kind of been saying for forever. It took a pandemic.
Look, obviously I've been advocating for a daytime work thing, right? But that's just because I'm straddling 2 time zones. So that's what works for me. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think that as long as you are able to, like, I definitely think like less time working, more time just living, whatever that means to you is like really, really important, and not being married to a space or married to a job. So this idea of 4 on 3 off is great. I think I tend towards a slightly more socialistic outlook. So I obviously love the idea of a universal basic income. I think that would just allow for a creative renaissance, whatever that means. Do you know what I mean? Whether that means you get to open up your flower shop or the restaurant of your dreams or create plays or whatever that is. I'm obviously advocating for that. Yeah. I do think, flexibility. I mean, it's just been lovely. All the people knowing that they can work from home, and as long as they're supported and you can do your thing, I'm all for it. I think it's great. I really do.
That's a really, it's a really good direction that things are going in. And speaking of politics, I've got a friend, Jeffrey Amura, who is running for representation in New York. I don't know which part you're registered in, but if you can vote for him, he's amazing. He'd be the first Japanese American. Oh, okay. Well, but maybe you can. Maybe you can give him an endorsement.
I can endorse.
Yeah.
And so that's what I was doing last year. I was like, look, I'm not allowed to vote here because I'm not a citizen.
Right.
I'm hoping I'll get my citizenship in like 4 years' time because the visa that I'm on is a gateway visa. So when I get it renewed, I think a year after that, I'm allowed to apply for citizenship.
Amazing.
And that's what I'd really like to do.
Yeah.
I see my future very much here now.
Right.
But because I can't vote, but obviously I'm so politically engaged. So I canvassed. Basically, because I'm also not allowed to donate, which on one hand is fine because obviously I lost a shit ton of work and I've been piss poor. But do you know what I mean? It's nothing like staring poverty in the face. But I can canvass and I can advocate, and so I was making sure I was doing that basically, and like out on the streets and. If there wasn't like state lockdowns, my plan originally was that I was going to go to like Republican areas of America with like Joe Biden and Kamala Harris flyers and just like go and fly out. Like part road trip because I really want to do an American road trip.
Of course.
Did you see that documentary on Blockbuster?
Oh my God. I want to see the last Blockbuster in America, right?
It's amazing. It's amazing. And my
Yes,
key takeaway is I want to drive to Oregon and join. Like just drive there and just like become a member and then like buy a DVD player along the way and just like stay in a motel that night and just like do a movie marathon just so I can be a member of this Blockbuster and drive across America to get there. Basically, that's like my next big ambition. I've been like hoping for. Before the pandemic happened, my plan, I think I told you that my plan was, because I've been working so hard, was just to take a full month off for pleasure. Now, look, I ended up taking some time off, but that was more about like just sorting my fucking head out. I do still have this like dream that at some point soon I can just take like a month or two off of just like absolutely no work and just go and do something like drive across America, essentially. I just really love to do that.
I think that'll be possible soon. I wouldn't. Yeah, don't do it now while everything is still COVID-y.
Oh yeah. It
won't be.
Everything's still COVID-y. Yeah, we just need a few more people to have their vaccines.
Yes. Well, keep your fingers crossed. I've got an appointment tomorrow.
Have you?
At the Science Museum.
Oh really?
Yeah, but I've heard rumours that they've occasionally been turning away people. But I would love to get vaccinated at the Science Museum. And yeah. I don't think I've got any anti-vax listeners, but if I do, stop being silly. Okay.
Stop being silly. Also, actually, on the anti-vax thing, right? Okay. Yeah. So I got into a discussion, an online discussion with a right-wing person, basically, who was like super right-wing, super anti-vaxxer, super conspiracy theorist, basically thinks that the vaccine is a way to control the population, and they're going to release a new version of the drug next year, and it's going to kill everyone who's had the vaccine, and it's all the left's fault. And I was like,
George Soros.
Yeah, exactly, George Soros and the Jews.
Of course,
right?
Of course.
Does everyone listening know that we're both Jewish? I'm sure they're assuming this by now. So we're not being anti-Semitic when we got the Jews.
We're allowed it.
We are Jewish. We're not anti-Semitic. Anyway, so I got into this conversation with this guy where I was basically going, your logic is really fucked up. And he's like, why? And I'm like, well, if the lefts are the evil ones and we are planning world depopulation and complete and utter control via the vaccine, why are we going to leave alive the right wing who are going to fight us? We're going to leave alive the left wing who are compliant. So if you're sensible, take the vaccine, because if you're right and the left is going to depopulate the world, they're not going to take out the people. They're giving us the vaccine because they're about to kill all you lot, basically, because we're doing what we're told by doing this, and that's what the controllers of the world are going to want. They're going to want the good compliant people. They're not going to want you people. So take the vaccine. If that's true, take the fucking vaccine.
Did you get through?
No, he told me that I'm a commie C word, and that I'm going to die, either at his hand or the hand of George Soros. But if you're a more sensible anti-vaxxer who are listening, like, and you're spreading conspiracy bullshit. It's like what I say with the story, right? As a writer, I get to set up the world. I get to create the rules. I get to create the parameters, right?
Yeah.
If I'm creating fantasy and in the first act, I haven't put a unicorn in there, I can't suddenly bring a unicorn in act 3. It's going to be so jarring. Do you know what I mean? Like, I establish the rules, don't break my own rules. So conspiracy theorists listening, just listen to the rules of your own conspiracy theory. The left are not going to want to take out the left. They're going to want to take out the right. So vaccinate. And to the people who are sensible, get your vaccines, love. Let's get the world moving.
Get your nice little vaccines, have a cup of tea and go to bed.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I feel like the anti-vax thing feels to me that it's less prominent in the UK, though, no?
I think it is, yeah. There's I've spent quite a lot of time in the States. I think you might agree when I say things there just tend to be a bit more extreme in general. Like the UK just kind of does settle into the middle a bit more in everything. And that has benefits and drawbacks, of course.
And it's about numbers as much as anything. It's like 350 million versus 60.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean?
So there's just a wider scope for all kinds of fun things like anti-vaxxers.
And look, again, as a writer, like these people in these places, they're really entertaining. You can gather so much story. You can learn so much about the human mind, the way people talk and all that kind of stuff. So in one way, it's really useful and kind of fun. But in another, it's also terrifying.
I know. It's like, what would we do without villains, right? Because every compelling story ever has conflict and people that you root for and people that you're against. And then in real life, you kind of don't want those people to exist. But that's
absolutely do not want those people.
But they have to, don't they? Because otherwise, it's a balancing act, the whole thing. Stephen. So what have we found? What have we concluded? Take your vaccines, vote for left-wing causes, work 4 days a week, don't check your emails after 10. Have I missed anything?
Be kind.
Be kind. Yeah.
In your comedy, but also in life.
Yeah. I can't think.
Yeah, we covered a lot of ground.
I mean, it's been absolutely wonderful. I wish I had more time, but maybe you'll come on again in the future. How does that sound?
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Really fun. It's really fun.
Possibly even in person when such things are allowed.
Oh my God, that'd be such fun.
We'd have a blast.
That'd be such fun. If I wasn't sitting in a car right now, I would have let you video this. But I'm sitting in a car.
That is okay, my darling, wonderful man. I'm going to let you go. I can't believe I've had you locked in a car for an hour and a half. Go and enjoy the cat skills and be creative and keep being you. And I can't wait to see you.
I can't wait to see you. And everything you just said goes back twice doubly. I can't wait to give you a good squeeze. I'll see you soon, my love.
All right, take care.
Okay, take care. Bye.
What an absolute delight that was. There are no words for how much I adore that man, and obviously how exciting is it? Oh, one Jewish boy, is it coming back? Is it coming back? It looks like it might be coming back. Can't get too excited. Just focus on the present. Keep doing what you've got to do. See, I'm still getting too excited, but I'm working on it. Yeah. Thank you very much, Stephen, for coming onto the show. Thank you very much to my patrons and to my listeners and to everybody who's been supporting this show. And I'm not going to stop doing it when life comes back. Don't worry. I'm still here for you. And I will see you next week for another episode of The Bliss of the Abyss. I love you. Bye. Yeah. Thanks for listening to the show. If you've enjoyed it, please give us 5 stars and consider becoming a subscriber and maybe even supporting us on Patreon. Really, really, really helps me continue making this show. If you haven't enjoyed it, then you can fuck off. Many, many thanks to Nils Hennis Steer for the amazing music and to Dave Fox for the cool artwork. Please keep coming back every week for more Bliss of the Abyss.
Message 1.